We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. A new world order. A new world order. A new world order.
Right and wrong. A new world order. New World Order. Yes, George. How did that work out? Thank you. All right. So that was Psykowski Watcher who made that video. So we'll credit them. Thank you. Yeah, Ministry. They're fine. I mean, I don't know. I know the one album with that on it, and I liked it at the time. Though that really was the only track that I kept. You listen to these records. It used to be you bought an album for a song you heard, and often as not, that was like the only good song. Usually it would be that song was really good, and then one or two others. And maybe you would discover another one that you actually liked better. But then, and they used to talk about this, the rest would be deliberately filler. Even the Rolling Stones claim to have followed that strategy. One or two, attempts at hit songs, and then filler. Which was funny that they would say that, because to me they made a couple, they had a stretch where they made a bunch of records where all the stuff was good. Albums like Exile on Main Street, Beggar's Banquet. We just put them on and play them. No skips. Yeah. Phil says their Ministry, almost completely political for like 10 albums in a row now. Yeah, and I don't even know what their politics are. Like, I see that one, and that came out during the Bush administration, and it's just typical, I hate to use the phrase anti-Americanism. And it's funny, too, because I kind of share the view of these guys, right? That there's an excess of American militarism, an excess of American exceptionalism. I'm not for us creating a great empire. But, when you hear from these guys, you just know that it doesn't go beyond that, and they'll equate it with racism often, like it's all, for them, it's of a part of this whole liberal misconception of the world. This really, and I want to talk about this, what I saw yesterday. It's a very boomer attitude. It's a very Henry Rollins pose, Fucking Henry Rollins, and, people used to think that guy was cool, but I'm pretty sure now there's nobody left. There's no non-boomers left who think Henry Rollins was cool, right? What was the band? He ended up taking over a classic punk band that was a good punk band, if you liked punk. Was it Black Flag? I never really got that deep into punk to really, know much, really, beyond the Sex Pistols, and a couple of Dead Kennedys songs, I just like punk adjacent stuff. But yeah, Henry Rollins came out. He's wearing no shirt on stage, and it looks like he's been working out. And I just knew from the start, this guy's a fucking poser, right? For one thing, I mean, you got to look like Iggy Pop, right? Old Iggy Pop, young Iggy Pop, right? He took his shirt off, and he was like this gristled, just, freakish looking. He looked, he looked like a homeless guy with his shirt off. That's what you're supposed to look like. That, or just really pale, and just sort of no musculature at all, and tats. But if you come out there and you're a little buff, it's like, no, you're going to a gym, and so don't give me your, I'm a fucking rock and roll rebel, and I have a fucking membership at LA Fitness. Fuck you. All right. So what's happening, guys? What's going on? Yeah. We just let's see. We might have something up here just for a visual, right? A Vish. What happened to Vish? We've lost Vish. I've lost everybody who used to come. I've alienated virtually everyone who used to come here. We had maybe 20 regular guys. Share this tab. And so this is just background, and this is actually from yesterday. June 14th was No Kings protest, and it seems to be muted today. I didn't even go into the city. I never go into the city anymore. The Seattle area is a disaster now. Traffic is a nightmare. I lived here I always say 25 years ago. No, it was only 12 years ago that I moved to Portland. But the difference is noticeable. For one thing, the demographic change. Yeah, we got the Indians everywhere, much more Latinos. It used to be majority white. It feels like the LA I left 25 years ago to come here. But I mean, the worst part about it is the traffic. I mean, going to the city, it's just, you don't want to do it. You just don't want to get in a car and you know, I mean, and even an hour and a half is probably what it would take. Like even today, right? Sunday, Saturday, the weekend is supposed to be light. Traffic used to lighten up on the weekend. It doesn't anywhere anymore. It doesn't here. It's just always bad. I'm north of the city, and it should be a half an hour. It used to be. If I went outside of traffic, you know, I loved it. You know, it's a half an hour right into the middle of Seattle. Get into trouble, you know, and I would go and walk around looking for trouble. Not really, but I would go into the city. Now I don't even go. I've been back here a year, just about a year to the day, I think. It's just about exactly a year ago. And I never want to go to the city. For one thing, it looks awful. It feels awful. And, you know, what am I going to do there? Plus, I've changed, I guess, you know. We just go to the city and have breakfast. God, it's so bougie. Yes, I'm using the word bougie. But anyway. So I'm here like 20 miles north of the city in a quiet place that's, I guess, a suburb. Please refrain from, I gotta do more, I failed to kill. Please refrain from seating till intermission, says gotta do more. Gotta do more says he's been at Zero Hedge, is that? ZH all day. Spicy comment threads. Zion Don getting ready to send the young U.S. GIs to war. Yeah, so I guess we'll talk about that first. I'm focused on, though I still haven't dug deep enough into it, I was going to cancel this because I haven't had time to prepare anything. The only thing to talk about right now is what's going on with Israel and Iran. And the obvious complicity of Donald Trump. That's just, you know, it's so obvious at this point, you know, and they were trying. Trump has such a pattern, and people just, you know, the people who are diehard Trump supporters just are never, there's nothing he can do at this point to lose them, apparently. And I think, you know, he may mean business regarding immigration. I mean, he's actually doing something. It's not enough. Maybe too little, too late, but that might be simply because no one is going to be able to fix this thing that's gone too far. But as you see, he's backed down, you know, and he will always be a sucker for his fellow businessmen when they talk dollars and cents. So he's backed down regarding farm workers and other things. But, you know, somewhere I saw a tweet where somebody said that the numbers, we're going to have 1 million less immigrants this year. That's good, obviously. You know, the numbers are going down. And I don't look at deportations. It's the same way when you know, these idiots, shit libs, like Jimmy Dore. You know, love Jimmy Dore, but he's like Tucker Carlson, right? These guys don't go very deep. You don't dig down very deep into their intelligence till you hit the hard stone of their stupidity. And for Jimmy Dore, he just retains his shit liberty. But I've got to say, for him, I don't know if you guys know anything about him, but for him, it seems there's way more potential for him than there is for Tucker Carlson, who's that aw shucks stupidity about him, right? Just credulity about him. But anyway, I was talking about Dore, and I forgot what I was going to say. What the fuck is this? This is weird. So, sorry guys, but I'm looking over, I've got my... Okay, no. I'm going to post this. So here it is. I'm looking at the live chat. I can see what you guys have been saying. Then there's the pane that where I would type in something. What I'm seeing, I can read when I'm going to, and then the little arrow where I can post it. I look over, and there's this phrase here. Let me just post it up. And it says, the name and the content suggests a conventional... Maybe I wrote that. I don't know if I wrote that. I probably wrote that about ministry. I don't know that I wrote that, though. Weird shit going on. Anyway. There are... Anyway, the Trump derangement syndrome, there's two types now. You got to admit there's two types of Trump derangement syndrome. One is the lefties and the boomers and sort of conventional people, and the last remaining CNN viewers, who all just think he sucks, that he's a fascist, and he takes seriously all that. And there's the other Trump derangement syndrome, which are the people who think he can do no wrong. He's heroic. He's always playing 5D chess. They're always, and even if they're, say, critical of Israel, they're trying to spin this, right? And they're just, all he has to do is feed them some little thing that they can use as an excuse for him. And I was thinking about his speech in Saudi Arabia, which I actually, I couldn't get through it. It was supposed to be this great speech. And I tried to watch it, and I was like half an hour in, and I'm thinking, why don't these Arabs, pull their daggers out of their belts? I'm sure they all got daggers under those robes, and fucking just attack him for this horrible speech. He's giving a stump speech. He always gives the stump speech. Well, when I took office, I wish I could do the Trump voice. It's like an easy one to do, but I can't do it. It was so awful, right? And I saved it, right? And he's telling them about all this great shit he's done. Half of it, more than half of it, thoroughgoing bullshit. And they're sitting through it. But I had seen, and I've seen the good parts, the great part, right? Where somebody wrote for him this wonderful critique, nothing new, but this wonderful critique of, U.S. interventionist liberal policy. That they really, of course, we don't need to hear this critique anymore. What we need to hear is how that's just a gloss over support for Israel and Zionist ends. But, he gave this wonderful speech. Again, it's kind of Tucker Carlson caliber. It's from 10 years ago. It's stuff that good old Rand Paul's dad was telling us 15 years ago, maybe. But it was well put. And the fact that he's in Saudi Arabia speaking to all these Arabs, yeah, they're Muslims. I just can't get excited about the Islam, because I know it's a fucking dodge. Even though it's a disaster for Europe right now, even though it will be a disaster for us, just one of the disasters for us, even though everything that people say about it being incompatible with our society is absolutely true. I'm not going to rise to that bait, because that's not the point, you know what I mean? And as you see, it's been thoroughly co-opted at this point by the Zionists and the pro-Israel dopes. But he's given this great speech, and you realize this is what he's been getting away with since 2016. And I don't even know if he is smart enough to figure it out. I mean, he knows instinctively. The guy's a born politician, despite never having been one. He always was. That's why he became a celebrity rich guy, and not, and didn't just content himself with being this successful real estate developer in New York. He had to become a celebrity, because really there's no difference between becoming a celebrity in the way he did and becoming a politician. But he just has this, if there's a genius to him, he knows how to give us, those of us who were hungering for doing something about immigration, doing something about now DEI and everything else. Those of us who were just hungering for somebody to stand up and not mollycoddle the left, you know what I mean, and not to say yes, I mostly agree with you, but no, he was a guy who was coming and telling them screw you. But he knows just how to give us when we need that little dopamine rush, right? When we need that little hit, a little morphine shot. He gives you something like the Saudi Arabia speech. J.D. Vance took up the task when he gave a speech in Europe, which took them to task. The fact that it's J.D. Vance saying it just shows you what bullshit it is. But he just knows, how to give the boobs, the idiots who who still think he's on their side and still think he's going to actually do something. He knows how to give them just enough to keep them on the line. And it doesn't take much because you have nowhere else to go. That's the reality of American politics. You get nowhere else to go. It's like the old joke about the Ford Model T. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. You can have any government you want as long as it's conventional, pro-Israel, high immigration, corporate dominated, yada, yada, yada. I hate that I use that phrase, yada, yada, yada. Got to do more, says, admit, like a chump, thought Trump 2.0 would actually make things better. Yeah, as late as this last election, even though I didn't vote. I will say that. I did not vote, and I knew this thing with Iran. I knew that was coming. And it came. We all saw it coming, right? But I was still saying things better than Kamala. It might be that Kamala would be better. Kamala at least would be held to account somewhat by all the fervently pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist people on the Democratic side. The younger people and the browner people on that side who don't give a shit about Israel. The Republicans are still weighed down. And ironically, what's going to make Trump fail, or what prevents Trump from having his road to Damascus moment and coming round and actually being that guy, is those idiot boomers and old Republicans who many of whom were waving flags in 2003 for George W. Bush, right? And they, and that was always there. We always, those of us who supported Trump in the past, as at least something, at least some shot at turning this thing around, we've always had to, ignore that aspect of it. And that's what I saw yesterday. I don't know if I should say the city. I don't want to dox myself. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm way too obscure to be doxed, really. But I took a ride. I was on my motorcycle, and I ended up in Everett, Washington. Everett, Washington is about 15 miles north, not far from where I live now, temporarily. Interesting history of Everett, Washington. That's where the Wobbly riots occurred way back in like 1910 or something, right? Maybe Depression era, 1930s. There were riots on the docks. It's on the Puget Sound, and it actually competed at one point with Seattle for trade as a port, but Seattle won out, probably because it's more suitable for a port. The Puget Sound here, we're not on the Pacific Ocean, but Puget Sound is massive, and large ships can come in. But anyway, they had docks in the 30s, and they had the International IWW, right, whatever the Wobblies were called, and they had some, you know, violent riots during the 30s, and then there was an incident where a bunch of them were shot and killed. You know, this was during the Depression when there was some serious labor unrest going on. Anyway, so I get off the freeway because I remember there's a Taco Del Mar in Everett, Washington. Been here since I lived here years ago. I love that it's still here, and they still make the same fish tacos. They make it exactly the same way. Run by an Indian guy now. Nice guy. Well, I got a funny story about the Indian woman who works there. But anyway, so I get off the freeway knowing I can go down Broadway through downtown, like downtown, to the extent that this city has a downtown, which is usually dead on the weekends. These places clear out on the weekend. So I'm heading down Broadway into the downtown core of Everett, and I come upon a huge protest. It's the June 14th, No Kings protest, right? And there are I would never think in this place where you don't see any political demonstrations, you don't even see people on the weekend, you know. It's just like the dullest, quietest place, right? And so I'm heading down, and all of a sudden, huge crowds, thousands and thousands. There must have been 5,000 people crowding this small downtown area, and they're all down the streets. And almost every one of them is old. They're all gray hairs. They're all geriatric. I mean, like maybe 20% of them were younger people. No presence of Antifa, sort of. I don't know if I've seen a single Antifa type person. Few even like young, blue-haired, pronouns in bio types. Just, it's like, I wrote some notes here about this. At the same time, the Antifa's rioting in Seattle still, right? And if in L.A. it looks like they emptied the prisons, right? You see the Mexicans, it looks like they emptied a Mexican prison somewhere, and they're all doing their thing. In Seattle, in Portland, anytime there's a demonstration or riot, it's like they emptied the fucking insane asylum, right? This was like they emptied the nursing homes out. I cannot, and I didn't get any pictures because I'm on my bike. I couldn't even park because it's just people everywhere. Could barely get down the street. I wish I had my GoPro on the bike or something. I even went in there, back toward there, earlier, to see if there was any, but they're all gone. But yeah, it's just like the average age was probably 65. Just, old ass people. And there's something creepy about it. For one thing, I was talking about waving flags for George W. Bush back in the day. If these guys were old back then, you can see them doing that shit. Right? I don't know. Most of us are older here, so we remember 2003. You could that's like the same people who you might have seen at one of those, except older now, right? Like even then, at a George W. Bush rally, you would have seen some younger people. But it's like they took those people and they took the little American flags out of their hands and the patriotic wear, and they gave them just new gear, new signs. And it's the same energy, though, and it's the same creepy, maybe I'm reading too much into this. I don't think I am, because I've met these people, I've talked to these people. And Americans, especially older Americans, are sadly lacking in intellectual, and critical thinking at this point. But there's just this creepy vibe of, the enthusiasm wasn't angry. The signs were angry. The signs were angry, and they're just typical, like most of it bad jokes about Trump. Some of it inexplicable, right? You know, it's always Trump as this, Trump as that. You know, horrible wordplay. They just can't do wordplay, you know. But there's something about, you see these people, and you just know you're never going to talk any sense into them. Just like before, when they were talking about Saddam Hussein, and you know, and they had no clue what was happening. I imagine many of these people were probably there for 2003, right? And were probably at that, you know. Now here they are turning out for Trump. There's just this wall, right? There's this unthinking, cattle-like vibe with them. And again, I didn't talk to anybody. I just went up and down the street. I made it to Taco Del Mar, though, and I kind of listened to the conversations that were going on. And yeah, they were pretty stupid fucking conversations. The people who believe this shit, like, you know, it's fascism, right? And these are people, you know, what's the meme where there's a guy sleeping and it's some thoroughgoing outrage and he's sleeping away, and then the next panel is some silly bullshit thing, and his eyes are open and they're fucking lasers. It's that vibe, right? It's that they can. I wouldn't hate these people like I do. You know, if they just had one thing right about what it is to hate about Trump, right? You know, none of them, they don't even understand what's happening and how he's bringing in, you know, he's talking about censorship, and he was censored, and there is real censorship, obviously, against his side. But at the same time, of course, he's censoring on behalf of Israel, and he's going to go to war on behalf of Israel. These guys just slept through that. They just sleep through all the bad stuff. They don't even know about Palantir. They don't even know what's going on with J.D. Vance and with Peter Thiel behind the scenes, and, you know, Elon Musk, they think is just an old school fascist. They don't really see what's going on with them. And that works to our enemy's advantage, because they're, you know, because we're all out here dealing in generalities, and most of us are distracted. So it's just so easy to turn the masses one way or the other. You know, and if you're bullshitting all these geriatrics that I saw the other day, you're doing it with a lie that so comports with reality, that is so much partly true, but at the end of the day misses the point. At the end of the day distracts these guys from what's really happening, is the country's being stolen out from under them. Of course, with that said, they seem to have no clue about immigration. I mean, the shit with immigration is where they really go fucking soft in the head, and they just buy into this idea that it's fascist, it's Hitler. You know, Hitler deported the Jews. Hitler deported German Jews, so we're supposed to think that Trump deporting, you know, some of the 20 million or so that Biden let in, concentrating on the criminals, for instance, is just one and the same. We've seen this, you know, and you hear these idiots talk, right? And they pull out all the old bullshit canards, all the old chestnuts. History repeating, man. We've seen this before in the 30s. So shut the fuck up, man. I'm gonna throw you from a building like a Iranian throwing a child molester off a building. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, that's what I saw there. And the crowd, no, you cannot generate that crowd locally. Those guys were bussed in. But probably not from all over the country. People say that. Certainly not these oldsters. They were not making that long trip. But these guys were gathered from all around Washington State, definitely. And they're, you know, and you realize, so here's the boomers, and then down in Seattle it's the usual fucking lunatics. who would hate those boomers, really, just for being white, overwhelmingly white, this crowd in Everett, despite the fact that now it's very largely Latino, and the usual demographic shift has happened here. And curiously, fewer Latinos. I mean, there was a few. Like I said, about 20% of the crowd was not old white gray hairs, but really, that probably not an exaggeration to say about 80% of that crowd were old Hawaii's, with the stupid fucking look on their face. But very little Latin representation, even though, like I said, there's a large Latino population here now. And of course, they're all gone already. But yeah, that's what we had in it, and you realize it was depressing. And I think Trump is might actually lose. For one thing, the guy's got no persistence, right? He does not, he gives way, as you see. He did his weird thing with the tariffs, and he appears to have just totally stood down, right? Maybe the tariff idea was a stupid idea from the start, but, he talks a big game, and then he stands down, when it gets tough enough, or when he gets a talking to from his handlers or other business people, or, the people that he really respects, But, let's see what you're saying. Got to do more, says Everett, Washington. I think that's where the ginormous Boeing plant is. Been to it. Yeah, it is. Largest building in the world, they say, but it's just because it's like these giant hangars that they keep adding on to. So that thing covers more ground, more fucking square footage inside this one building than there is any other building in the world. Yeah. Gotta do more, says, I refuse to eat Mexican anymore. Well, I ate Mexican food. Well, it was, like I said, there's this one, he's a nice guy. He's Indian, he's a nice guy, young guy, the fucking guy, I mean, this is not one of those Indians who's out there taking your coding job. I don't know what his story is, but I think he's like fucking, he might be like a slave brought over, right? This one Indian guy is there almost every day. Same guy. I get the same thing every time when I swing through there. He always remembers me. But yeah, him. I had Mexican. Usually, it's Mexican food made by an Indian. So hate me if you want, but I can't. I have to be allowed some indulgences here, But then this Indian woman started showing up there. So the place was bought by an Indian guy, and he's got this Indian dude. I asked him once, oh, your family runs the place. I just assumed what it was, and he was the youngest guy in the family, maybe, so he's the one who gets to fucking work 12-hour days most days. He says, no, just a guy, no, who owns it? So I have no idea what it's about. But then this Indian woman starts showing up. Should I tell the story? It's kind of funny, I guess. It's just kind of stupid. So this Indian woman shows up there. She's really nice. Honestly, I don't think Indian women are so bad either. They always seem to like me. I always seem to get on very well with them. No, they're not often. It's weird, because I used to think they had all these beauties, because you'd see the Indian movies, right? And they always have these, these beautiful Indian women in the films. You never see them in real life. They're not bringing them here, or they're keeping them in the house, veiled or something. I don't know. Anyway, there's an Indian broad there, she's nice enough. So I go in there one day, this is a few months back. I'm hardly ever in the area anymore. So I go in there, and I ask to use the bathroom, or no. They have a bathroom in the back, down a hallway that they share in this office building, right? And they usually have a key hanging up on a big ring. And I'm in there and I'm eating and I got to take a leak. And it's just like I'm sitting down. I'm going to try and eat through this. But, I'm an old dude. So, sometimes when you got to go, you got to go. And the key's missing. What the hell, man? And I'm too embarrassed to ask for the key. Where's the key? This just shows how stupid I am. So I'm going to walk back there and see what's going on, if the door's unlocked or anything. So I go back there, and the key's in the door. And like an idiot, I think, oh, someone left the key in the door. And I open it. And I come walking in, and of course, there's the Indian woman sitting on the can. We're both like we're, mirror images of horror. And I shut the door and I run out. And I grab my food and kind of wrap it up. Usually I sit there and eat inside and hustle out in the street before she could come out. And I never go back there. I mean, like yesterday when I went back there, I parked outside and I'm looking. Okay, she's not there today. But I just thought it was funny. They always talking about Indians shitting and this thing about Indians and relieving yourself. And I just thought it was weird that I find myself face to face with a shitting Indian. Yeah, I guess that's not a funny story, but Phil the Kill says you were probably lucky you had an older type protest crowd. Had you made a wrong turn in LA, could have lost your bike without some oath on your knees. Yeah, on the bike, I don't know, it's weird. I wonder. I mean, I want to take a swing through Seattle on the bike, but you're exposed. Yeah. It might be better in some situations. It might be worse. But if you get in a situation, where they're attacking vehicles, you're all out in the open. I don't know how they feel about motorcycles either. Like good, bad, But I am definitely going to go down there. Like if it was Antifa back in Portland and you're riding around your motorcycle, they might think you were part of the Antifa. Antifa in Portland was organized, right? It's so funny. They're so LARPy. Like I used to tell you guys that they made their own ambulances. They had the little mini Sprinter vans painted black because you can't paint anything white, I guess, with a Red Cross style cross on it. Those were their medics. And they had runners on motorcycles or scooters, usually small motorcycles, who would do whatever it was they did, but they would scoot around because the Antifa had taken over Portland downtown pretty much. And they were blocking off streets at will. And the cops were, a month or two into the thing, the cops had given up on trying to run the city, and they were pretty much letting Antifa run wild. So Antifa would close off the streets around the downtown core where they kind of dominated. They dominated the small area in front of the police station, federal courthouse, and what else was there? Well, city hall's on one side anyway. They ran like a 4 or 5 block square area, and they would block it off with roadblocks, and they had motorcycles running security, right, that would be going back and forth. So they were organized, yeah. But I don't know how it will work if I try the motorcycle. Try to get some footage of a demonstration on the motorcycle. But it seems like even in LA, it's not like the BLM riots. And it's any riot now or then that is Antifa dominated. You're under threat, because if you go in among them and just if you look normal, they're going to spy you out and think, okay, they're just paranoid, looking for infiltrators. And any riot, of course, that involves black people, you're a white person, you're probably going to get attacked. But it looks like the LA riots, even while they're violent and they're attacking ICE and the cops, you probably get away with walking amongst them as a white person as long as you dress like they do and look like you're there to protest. You know, it's Antifa and the blacks. It's always the blacks. In this case, it's Antifa as well, that are a direct threat to you. Yeah, but that's funny. And what we're dealing with now is the Boomer Antifa alliance. That's what I thought was the most depressing aspect of what I saw yesterday, is that we're dealing with this ridiculous alliance, right? These idiot boomers, these idiot oldsters with the blue hairs. And it's funny, blue hairs was an expression not too widely used, but widely enough way back in the day that used to be it described older people because bad hair dye, bad black hair dye can look blue, right? So blue hairs meant oldsters who, now, of course, it's the blue hairs who wear the fucking pastel blue or whatever you call that, light blue. But anyway, that's the 1-2 punch, and it's going to be pretty effective, against Trump, and they're just going to, they're going to submit us to 2020 all over again, at a low level this whole time, though, that remains with Trump's agenda, because they really, really hate the idea that we might get immigration under control. Even though, at this point, they could just sit back and let the demographic change happen. They're outbreeding us. We're already, you know what I mean? You hear numbers like, there's like 60% white or something. It doesn't feel like that, right? And I'm in the Northwest, which is whiter than most of the country. It doesn't feel like that. And it doesn't feel like that in large part also because you look around. If you look around, you notice that the whites are older. And just if we stay where we're at, we just, if we shut the door to immigration now and just stayed where we are breeding-wise, we're still done. We're still done numbers-wise. So maybe, a lot of the craziness, the hysterics around Trump's immigration stuff, part of it is because he's actually doing something. He's just talking, and that terrifies them. A populist movement that's actually doing something about immigration. That is genuinely terrifying to people who, who thought before Trump came along that they had it in the bag. But yeah, this terrifying combination of these boomers, and I saw them out there, and it's just so depressing. Like I said, there's this cattle fucking quality to them, right? I mean, you see these old guys, and some of the old guys, they have those fucking ridiculous veteran hats on, right? USS fucking Enterprise, right? Some of them are Vietnam vets, right? But rest assured, when you see these old guys with the hat and maybe a vest, right? They used to love those, like, denim vests with the sleeves cut off. Most of those guys worked in a fucking motor depot, right? They worked in the motor pool or something. Very few people actually see combat. Even in Vietnam, there were, like 7-to-1 support to combat troops. Even, I was in the Air Wing in the Corps, and in peacetime. So the only ones of us that had a threat to go into combat, should it break off, would have been, plane captains, which was my job, because you become door gunners, and the pilots. But even that, it's just the difference between being a peacetime serviceman and actually having seen combat. It's just the same as the difference between a civilian and a combat veteran. Anyway, that's the curious and ridiculous combination that's going to sink Trump's domestic policies. Meanwhile, of course, Israel. Uh, and I see we lost America on two fronts this week, I think. I'm very pessimistic about the rioting, what's happening. I just know Trump is going to lose his stomach, and the hysterics of the left are going to work well enough that Trump isn't going to be able to get enough done. Combine that with the Krytarchs who man the judicial heights, all these appointed judges who can just knock down policy. Trump, even if he's in earnest, is not going to be able to get it done on immigration. And when he's gone, we have no champions left. Because also, Trump has destroyed his presidency this weekend with Israel, with this obvious complicity. There's a combination. He's trying to play it off like, okay, who was it? Rubio came out and said, the U.S. had nothing to do with this. Well, we know it's bullshit. And why do we know it's bullshit? Because Trump, what was it, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, he issued that order for dependents abroad in these vulnerable military installations in the Middle East and elsewhere. Put them on lockdown. Get ready. Something's going to happen, right? Send, dependents, come home if you can, and they're on high alert. Well, he gave it away. He knew then that this was coming. He knew then. I mean, there's not, it's obvious. And now he's trying to distance himself somewhat. Of course, it's Trump, so he has to contradict himself every fucking day, just on principle, Even if he wasn't getting pulled this way and that, he would do it just because that's what he does. But now he's talking about, we might have to go in. So his presidency is over. He's not going to get anything done. And that means that you don't get, if you wanted, J.D. Vance in 2028. Forget it. And even if J.D. Vance was going to be like Trump, a Zionist who nonetheless was trying to do something about immigration and demographic displacement, we're not going to get it. Because Vance is just not likable. He wears eyeliner. There's something wrong with him. And he is discredited along with Trump because in part of them trying to go along with Israel and trying at the same time to distance themselves. So what they have is he's duplicitous. We can see he's complicit in this. And also the added humiliation of him having to pretend. It's so obvious, right? He's trying to act like he has some control over the country, to spare himself the humiliation. But he gets both. He gets both the blame for complicity in it and the humiliation of revelation that he is not in charge and Israel's in charge. And he's going along with it, but he's being dishonest to us about it. It's just the worst of all possible looks for him. Now, okay. Phil says, I'm amused by the geriatric protesters. They grew up in 75% white America, and their last goal in life is to make sure no one will ever have it that nice again. Yeah, I mean, I can't defend boomers. I'm a young boomer. I'm one of the last boomers. And I cannot explain this. I think that the anti-boomer sentiment is overblown for various reasons, because it's not like all of a sudden the boomers came in and gave away the country. When you go back and look at the really stupid things, the things that destroyed us, like in the 60s, the Civil Rights Act and all that stupidity, that was the World War II generation. That's where those those guys in '65 who passed, the Civil Rights Act, who passed Hart-Celler immigration bill and set us on this path. That was the 1-2 punch. Let's bring a bunch of brown people in the country, and then let's start in motion this process whereby we demonize whites for their horrible things they do to brown people. It's essentially what did that, and then feminism, right? Two. It's a 3-punch combination, actually, yeah. But that was, I always talk up this book. Hugh Davis Graham's The Civil Rights Era is a complete history of the legislation. It leaves out all the riots, it leaves out all the social nonsense, and it's just about what happened in Congress, right? And this guy's a liberal, a good, dumb liberal, He's one of those, well, I don't know, he's older than the boomers. And it just is the story of the legislation that destroyed America. As he sees it, as Hugh Davis Graham saw it, this wonderful, heroic, thing. It's their World War II. Their World War II story of heroism. We saved the world from ourselves. And the story he tells, though, is you realize it's post-World War II America. Right? 65 is 20 years after the end of World War II. And that's when all these guys who came home, right, they're in their 40s and older. And these are the guys who are running the country in the 60s. Reacting to the riots, reacting to the hippies, reacting to the protests. And they went at it with this can-do, this absolutely disastrous confidence. They're very different from the beaten down, they're very different from the cattle-like boomers I was talking about on the street yesterday, or the rest of us who, I have to include myself in them, who are kind of beaten down by the experience of the last 20 years or so. We're all just black-pilled. These were guys who thought there's a solution to every problem. These were the guys who thought we beat the Japanese, we beat the Germans, we saved the world, we're the richest country on earth, we can do no wrong, right? And they thought there's a solution for this problem. And when the driving forces, what motivated them above all, were the black riots. The black riots, you got to remember, came after, because starting around 60, starting with the Kennedy administration, every congressional session, it's ridiculous. I mean, and I read it, like I said, I read the liberal version of it, and I just don't even know why they don't question why it is that. But there was this expectation that in each session there would be a new civil rights bill. It was never good enough. We had to be making progress. And even if we did a bunch of stuff the year before, it starts around 61, 62. And Kennedy, to his credit, being this, lace curtain Irish, rich guy, who it was one of the Kennedys said, that the Depression was very good for their family got richer in the Depression. Kennedy, to his credit, was not this fucking starry-eyed liberal who thought that black people, were numinous, right? He, and he wasn't, perhaps unfortunately, he was focused on the Soviets and foreign policy, and, him and Nixon in 1960 ran against each other. The big issue was who was going to be tougher on the Soviets. But still, in his administration, and he's stocked with all these liberals, with every stupid liberal credulous misconception. So there's, like I said, every year there's going to be a civil rights bill. And then, of course, Kennedy gets assassinated in 63, and we get the absolutely abominable Lyndon Johnson, who, supposedly to his credit, had not a racist bone in his body, despite growing up in Texas and being this crude Texan. Not a racist bone in his body, loved black people, and of course started aggressively and in waving the bloody shirt of Kennedy's assassination, starts passing 63, 64, and then boom, in 65, the hammer coming down, these civil rights bills. And every sensible opposition just fell away. And some of them as afterthoughts, like affirmative action just kind of snuck in there, like it was taken for granted. Even, the black organizations lobbying for civil rights took it for granted that, no, we're not going to have something like affirmative action. That's ridiculous. There was even Martin Luther King stood on principle on that at first. And those things were just, it was a giant rug pull, is what it was. But before I got off on this tangent, what I was saying was, not in defense of the boomers, just, it's not just the boomers. Realize it was the so-called greatest generation, those World War II veterans who came home and gave away the farm, because this is my glib take. I know it only goes so far, but it's underappreciated, I think, because of the victory in World War II and the wealth of the United States and all the success we were having. We were suddenly the most powerful country in the world. They went at it like a bunch of good, earnest American engineers, like the U.S. Corps of Engineers trying to solve a problem. And they went at the problem of what we see now as the problem is that black people are never going to be able to keep up with us in professions, and they're never going to abide by the law to the extent that we do. They're never going to become white people. They're going to stay black people, and that means they're going to be a little more unruly, to put it lightly. But they just didn't view it that way. Even though most of them didn't have a lot of misconceptions. Most of them had, obviously, attitudes we'd consider racist now. But they just didn't expect, I guess the lesson, aside from the fact that, a can-do attitude can be a disaster, because there's some problems aren't solved, or they're just misunderstood, racism wasn't the problem. Black people were kind of the problem. And I don't like to pick on black people, because that's another distraction now from who, the real enemy, the real problem. Just like the stuff with the Muslims. Mostly it's true, but it's a distraction. And you see what's happened with the reascent of Trump. Is that they've taken our racism, and I don't use racism as a negative term. They've taken our racism, our sexism, our so-called Islamophobia, all of which are sensible positions to have, and they're turning it, or they kind of successfully. I don't know. Maybe it's a bunch of bots on Twitter, and I'm overrating how successful they've been with it. But the pro-Zionist dipshits, kind of like, the people around, good, dumb people like Steve Saylor are taking that so-called race realist position and putting it, turning that energy, kind of funneling it into pro-Israel sentiment, right? Ever since October 7th, and you saw it, they started hitting us hard, with how the Palestinians, they're just a bunch of dumb brown people. That's really what this is all about. And aren't we so edgy for talking about it, right? Let me show you some SAT test scores. Can you believe this shit? Can you believe how stupid those black people are? I'm sort of like those liberals who they'll bring that up, right? Who's the guy? There's this Jewish guy who's done great work, anti-Zionist work, typical secular Jew. I know I'm not saying trust him out, but who's the guy? He's always on Jimmy Dore. But he brought up the infamous essay, My Negro Problem, by I think it's the elder Podhoretz. And he threw that up, as an example. This was on Twitter. I'm on Twitter too much still. He threw that as an example of why the Zionists are evil. See, because they're racist. And I just look at that and I realize there's no winning. Because the essay, My Negro Problem, is, I think it's Norman Podhoretz who wrote it. He was he's growing up in Brooklyn or somewhere in New York City, like in the 50s or 40s. And there's already a problem with the blacks. They're already running fucking wild and beating up especially the Jewish kids, right? They're just already attacking the whites. And it's just all about that. It's like, and it's just his sort of apology, for, like, yeah, I want to be a good liberal. I want to, but, the reality on the ground is that these people are awful. And who's the fucking guy? He's a ginger, but he has no fucking eyebrows. Anyway. So anyway, he throws that up there, and I just realized, there's no winning. Because, yeah, Norman Podhoretz is awful because he's a neocon. Norman Podhoretz is awful because of what he spawned, because of so much what he said. But, it's not like everything that came out of Norman Podhoretz's mouth was wrong. That was the most honest thing he ever wrote. I mean, even Sigmund Freud wrote good things. Even Sigmund Freud made good points, even though the totality of Freudianism is an absolute disaster. But we're so simple that we fall for shit like that. Oh, see, Norman Podhoretz wrote something racist in the fucking 50s. So that's why we need to be anti-Zionist. No. I'm anti-Zionist because the Jews are destroying my country, right? I'm anti-Jewish. I'm anti-Jewish power, specifically. That's it, right? It's not based on anything else other than the fact that I don't have a country. These fuckers won't let me have a country, right? And my only shame is that it took me this long to get here, right? Max Blumenthal, thank you. I mean, Max does great work, as far as it goes. But, his dad was Sidney Blumenthal, as somebody pointed out. It was good to see him get almost ratioed, or maybe ratioed, in the comments. So he throws that up there, and not a few people pointed out, yeah, but that essay's kind of true. And wasn't your dad Sidney Blumenthal, who worked for the fucking Clintons? Shut the fuck up and tell me about how awful Israel is. You fucking prick. But it's depressing, because I see him throw it up there, and I know also our enemies on the right. Our enemies are pro-Zionist. That's it. I mean, that's really it. I don't even talk about the communists anymore. But the pro-Zionist right is going to throw that up there too and say, Podhoretz is right about how awful these black people were. Well, Palestinians are just sand niggers, right? That's basically what they're telling you. And again, I think maybe the Palestinians are awful. Everybody outside of Palestine hates the Palestinians. I think mostly they don't take in the Palestinians because they don't want the problem. You take in a large enough refugee population from anywhere out of a situation like that, you're transplanting that problem. The problem, these people are still going to organize and try to get their land back, which I support. I don't give a fuck about terrorism. I think it's fucking ridiculous that we talk about terrorism, we talk about tactics. I mean, this country's engaged, we've been engaging in terrorism for a long time. And we were doing it in your big, beautiful, good war, World War II, at horrible scale. The bombing of Dresden, the firebombing of Tokyo, and then the nuclear weapons. That's just the start of it. We've been, it's terrorism when you're too weak, when you don't have a big army, I guess, right? It somehow becomes not terrorism if you're stronger, which you think about the logic of that. The only one who has a right, if there's not a right, that's a silly way to look at it anyway, but the only one who can be excused, if you can be excused at all, for engaging in terrorism is the weaker party. And that used to be how we defined it. I remember people talking about that around 9/11. You know, the more sensible people talked about how, well, you know, the 9/11 terrorists, you know, they're the weaker side, so that's part of the explanation for this. So how does the stronger side, right, justify engaging in terrorism like Israel's doing now, like we've done in the past? So terrorism doesn't fucking make a bit of difference to me. If I was a Palestinian now, and I, you know, thought that's our land, and they're taking our land and they're genociding us, and it's not a crazy idea to have, I might engage in terrorism to fight back. God knows the Israelis engaged in terrorism to get their nation started, and they still do it now. I mean, they're ramping it up. The stronger they get, the more terrorist they become. So I don't even talk about terrorism. I don't even care. I don't give a fuck. Just like in this, I mean, the one wonderful, not wonderful, logically sort of beneficial thing about the Israel-Palestine dispute, if people would just fucking look, it reveals to us, you know, the bullshit, that at the end of the day, struggles are still about peoples and land. It's about peoples, power, and land, right? And it's still a fight over land. And that's what these fucking anti-Trump and no kings bullshit protests are really about. But these wars are being waged in America and in the West by zombies who are, you know, pardon the phrase, possessed of a mind virus. Those old geezers I saw on the street yesterday don't have a clue. Like I said, you could not have a reasonable conversation with these idiots. Most of the Israelis, you cannot have a reasonable conversation with these idiots. You know, they're just no talking to people. You know. All right. Feel the kill. Ginger with no eyebrows, right? I mean, that's the description. I don't know what happened to that guy's eyebrows. Because there are people who don't have any hair, right? There's a condition. I forget what it's called. Is it alopecia? It might be an extreme alopecia. But you have no hair on your head. You have no eyebrows. You got no hair anywhere. You're like a baby. Maybe you got a little down on you somewhere. Yeah. So I noticed that. I just thought it's weird. I can't dislike that guy, even though, like I said, he's Max Blumenthal. He's Jewish. He's a secular Jew. He believes all this liberal horse shit. His dad was Sidney Blumenthal. He's been awful on a lot of things, right? I mean, you know, before Israel became such a huge issue and such an obvious issue to take up, one of his things was always, you know, white supremacy. Yeah, he was a guy who was always talking about that shit. I remember him writing about the so-called war on Christmas. No, it's a war, asshole. But it's funny when you see Blumenthal and Mate, the other guy, Aaron Mate, he's the other guy who goes on Dore a lot. Sometimes they run the show for Jimmy Dore when Jimmy Dore's on a tour. And they're just like, it's hilarious. They're like they would be on, the only thing keeping them from becoming anti-Semitic is that they're Jewish, you know. And I kind of admire this about them, right? They're like, oh, well, you know, I'm stuck. I'm stuck here being Jewish. I can't really become but I would. If, you know. Anyway. Yeah, Jimmy Dore. Yes, those guys take over the show sometimes. He has Kurt Metzger on. Kurt Metzger, I know, is anti-Semitic. He just won't let himself be openly. He gets very close. He's almost brave in how close he gets. And I know he is in his private life. And you know I don't say it as a negative thing. Anti-Semitic, you're absolutely allowed. I mean, if you're not a little anti-Semitic, you're either Jewish or stupid. You know, there are three positions. You're Jewish, geriatric zombie like I saw on the street the other day, or anti-Semitic. You know, there's no... Pick one. Yeah. All right. What do you guys have to say? Thank you, the three of you, for talking. Bear says he successfully argued Grok into admitting white genocide was real and occurring. That's funny. Maybe we should establish a whole science and discipline around doing battle with AI, right? How to manipulate AI before it manipulates us. Bear, thank you. Russ Dobular and Keaton Weiss. Now, Keaton's a Michelin, and that's why Keaton is the more bearable guy. He's just like, he's a guy you would like, if you knew him. Just something. And he's actually not officially Jewish, because I think his mother's the non-Jew, among his parents. But Russ Dobular is just ridiculous. He's literally, they're very good in their critiques of, Zionist excess. But everywhere else, they're just shit libs at best. But Dobular is a literal theater kid, right? That was his first career in the theater. Trying to make that work in New York, I don't know how, but he's just absurd. He doesn't understand things outside of this narrow wheelhouse, right? He was talking about The Godfather. Right? It's so funny, because Jews, there's another thing out there that people don't know, that organized crime is largely Jewish. That's something you learn from reading Whitney Webb, who's not anti-Semitic apparently, but her work very much is. I recommend reading her, though it's dry and boring, and for me, there's that book she wrote about Epstein that I still haven't got through. It's on my Kindle. It's just like one of those slow reads. It'll take years. I go and take it in bits and pieces. But it's just name after name after organization establishing the network connections that constituted Zionist espionage in the United States and organized crime. And it's so boring. Like, again, it's just, I can't keep up with all the... I think most people probably have this experience with it, too. We're kind of stupid. We want you to tell us a story. And she is telling us a story, but the story is just so dense. As in, it's just like, a picture, a network of nerves, right? Synapses, right? And it's just so thick and dense that there's no separating them out. But she draws a picture of organized crime in the United States and its involvement with espionage and the government. And you realize organized crime is, this whole time, it's been a Jewish thing. And the stupid-ass Dagos, sorry Italians, you know I love you. But when you're calling somebody stupid, you might as well go for the full Monty. The dumbass Dagos have been suckered, because they like the romance of it. Oh, yeah. And I hate it. I hope you're with me. This whole mafia thing. They love the image of the mafia Don, and, there are all these channels on YouTube, the old fucking wise guys lying their ass off, right? Telling these stupid stories about all the crazy shit they did, all these Henry Hills out there, right? And the Dagos got suckered into accepting the idea that the Italian mafia was it, or the biggest part of it, or the most important part of it. And the whole time it's been Meyer Lansky and all these other people. And part of the problem with it identifying organized crime as Jewish is because like half of these guys were legit in half of their life. Half of these guys were bankers and or like the Bronfmans, bought Seagrams. Just half of these guys are serious businessmen. And whereas the dumbass Dagos got suckered, or with the Godfather movies, into accepting this romance, as they see it, of weird organized crime, and we had this this secretive, very scary organization of these charismatic and funny but absolutely psychopathic murderers, as you see in the Godfather movies or in other slightly more realistic movies like Goodfellas. But anyway, I was talking about Dobular. So Dobular's talking about, he doesn't get it. Dobular like a lot of Jews, he knows something about this, and he kind of likes that. The organized crime. He likes Bugsy Siegel, who was notorious, notorious violent psychopath, very scary guy. One of the Jewish guys, associate of Lansky, and they made a movie out. A good movie. Thoroughgoing bullshit where they make him into a hero. The Warren Beatty as Bugsy. The movie's named Bugsy. But he's talking about Godfather Part 2. And there's a character in there who's supposed to be Bugsy Siegel, right? I don't know the actor's name, but he's really good. And he has a problem with Michael Corleone, and he ends up getting assassinated. And Russ is mad because he says, oh, no, his character in the movie, you all know the movie, right? Mo Green. And Mo Green runs a casino for the Corleones, and Mike tries to squeeze him out of his casino, and he's, and he refuses to do it, and he tells Mike to fuck off. He slaps Fredo around famously for, right, remember? I have to knock heads around, he says, or something like, I have to kick a little ass sometimes to make things run. Fredo was banging cocktail waitresses two at a time. Players couldn't get a drink at the tables, right? That was the Mo Green character. So anyway, Russ is mad because he says, oh, they made Mo Green, who's supposed to be Bugsy, who, and he says it kind of admiringly, Bugsy Siegel, who was this really tough guy. They make him out to be this kvetchy Woody Allen style Jew. And anybody who's seen Godfather Part 2 knows that's not true. I mean, he's not Woody Allen. He's playing this tough businessman. They've sort of whitewashed the Siegel character. They've taken out the violent psychopath, and they just make him this tough businessman, right? Just a kind of stereotypical Jewish, no-nonsense Jewish businessman who's a kind of fearless, right? He tells Michael Corleone, he tells a mafia boss to get lost, that's Russell Dobular. He's just a fucking dipshit. But anyway. So Bear, in his battle with Grok, says, was it Grok that you... Okay, I'm going to go back up in here. There's some good comments. Bear says he successfully argued Grok into admitting white genocide was real. Yeah, says Bear. Grok was like, yeah, whites are disappearing and unlikely to rebound, but it's still not technically genocide because there's no proven intent. No proven intent. Like some Jew at the UN wrote a plaque. Yeah, Meanwhile, we have zero documentation of the Holocaust, but it's, you cannot challenge it, right? Yeah. You got to get it in writing, you dumb goyim. Yeah, shut the fuck up already, right? Phil says, I've made 3 white YouTube comments that I've tried to send, and once sent, it disappears into the void. Here and now? Interesting. We legit have people in America, Phil continues, that think there were active slave plantations all the way up to the Civil Rights Act. Yeah. Bear says that's almost as bad as making 3 YouTube comments and being completely ignored. Do you feel ignored, Bear? Bear says, I was thinking of Norman Finkelstein when I was trying to describe Max Blumenthal. Yeah. Finkelstein's all right, but, he's not our friend either, is he? He's very narrowly focused, too, and he doesn't really make great arguments. He just keeps repeating himself. He just keeps throwing himself into the breach over and over again with the same weapon. I mean, it's a good weapon. He's right, but, I don't trust these guys. Do not trust any of them. I mean, just treat them as they treat us. They might collaborate with us on this or that where they can, but don't trust them. Going back to The Godfather Part 2, when the older, it's later revealed, wiser mafia don tells young Michael Corleone. Michael Corleone tells, I forget Clemenza, maybe? I don't know. He tells the older guy who wants Hyman Roth killed. Hyman Roth was supposed to be Meyer Lansky in the Godfather films, and they make it like Meyer Lansky was like the top dog in organized crime for a long time before he was taken down. And they make the Hyman Roth character like he's like Meyer Lansky, except he's not anywhere near he's one of the heavy hitters, but he's forced to deal with Michael and the other guys, and he's just like one among equals, yeah. And Dabular, didn't like that either. So I guess I agree with Russ Dabular. Yes, we should very much feature and emphasize how Jewish organized crime was. Yeah, that's smart. That's a smart move. It's so funny. Russ has no clue about what's going on, right? It's talk about fucking crying out in pain as they strike you, right? Russ, this is a gift. This is a successful operation by your co-religionists to keep, to cool it with the anti-Semitism. Because if people knew the extent of Jewish organized crime in this country, the history of it, maybe they stop taking you and your stupid drama school ass seriously. I like Keaton though. Keaton's all right, but he's, they're both dummies, right? Like, who was it? Oh. I was talking about how the Zionists, who hate you, Gentile, are nonetheless trying to take advantage of your racism and your anti-DEI sentiment, to keep you on their side and on Israel's side. Ben Shapiro. Remember a few months back, Ben Shapiro comes out and he says, Trump should pardon Derek Chauvin. And so like fucking Keaton and Russ do a whole fucking segment on, whenever I used to try and watch them, I can't help it. Jimmy Dore's like a guilty pleasure, when I'm just randomly watching shit the way I used to watch TV, so Jimmy Dore show is just one of those for me that I'll just click on it when it comes up in my feed. But when it's those guys, I don't even bother anymore. But back when I was still giving them a chance, they come on and they're outraged because Ben Shapiro has advised, is lobbying for Derek Chauvin's fucking pardon. Which of course, to me it's like that poor bastard. What they did to Derek Chauvin is just, it's one of the reasons I hate them, right? They would do this so much more often. They would have done this with many more people. They wanted to do it with that Subway guy who choked the dude out. They wanted to do it with Kyle Rittenhouse. They would do it over and over again if they could. They're not getting away with it as much as they want to because social media, because cameras are everywhere, because there's some resistance to it. But they do a whole segment on it. What an outrage. How dare Ben Shapiro? How dare Ben Shapiro lobby for Derek Chauvin's, pardon? My God, do you know what Chauvin did? And, it's just, and then this a rehashing of this bullshit, weepy-eyed nonsense about how he killed that poor man by putting his knee on his neck. Anyway, and you see what I was talking about before. So here are the two sides of this same thing. Here's Ben Shapiro, who we can't trust, who is doing this. This is, what's the word I'm looking for? This is duplicitous behavior this is Ben Shapiro. This is dishonest. This is Ben Shapiro trying to manipulate us by saying, yeah, man, Derek Chauvin, pro-white, free Derek Chauvin. It's utterly meaningless, and he's just trying to keep you on the Israel plantation. And here's the other side, the liberals, the liberal secular Jews, saying, and this was what they were saying. Oh, see, all this Zionism is just racism. It's just more racism. That's what it is. It's of a whole with white racism and white supremacy. Well, we can't let these assholes, have the, It's, political discourse, it's not anymore. It was up until just yesterday, pretty much. But this is where it went wrong. When public discourse became Jews arguing with Jews, you got to hand it to them, man. They're good. They come to dominate all of these important things. But, how many times, and it's still often the case, that you see these two people arguing something, it's one Jew on the right, one Jew on the left. You're being taken down the river by these guys and their fake fights. And they're not fake fights either. They're real fights, but that's not the point either, right? Public discourse for a long time, it was like heavyweight boxing. White guys sitting watching two brothers beat the shit out of each other. That was us watching two Jews argue over our future. We can't have that. Yeah, Mogan David. They wanted to do it to George Zimmerman. Just endless. And they would the next guy down the road, they just want to feed more and more of us into that volcano. And it's not like they're trying to satisfy some rage out there, like they're trying to, it's like human sacrifice. No, we got to keep doing it. And the real point, though, is to keep alive this myth, right? Oh, what the fuck? Do you hear that? Oh my God. Anyway, the real point is not to assuage this black rage out there. This, of course, has nothing to do with justice. It's to keep alive this, If every year they throw some poor white schmuck like Derek Chauvin into prison for this horrible thing, it keeps alive this myth of a malicious violent white supremacy lording it over black people, which is obvious bullshit. Somebody with a name I cannot read, right? Something. Ben Shapiro, dishonest? I know. No. Ben's wonderful. He also says they may call me anti-Semite, but they'll never call me a liar. Yeah, that's funny. And they'll never call you a cab either. You'll walk home. You hear that Filipino gal out there? I'm going to have to go out there and take care of this. Yeah, it's all about keeping the myth alive, keep hope alive, keep the dopes alive. Yeah. But unfortunately, and people are starting to show up, and I'm always bitching about not getting people here. But I gotta go. Let's just go back and read the comments at least. Gotta do more says the white guys protesting are lost. I do think the females can be won back, but it's going to take masculinity to do it. Interesting take. Maybe you're right, man. I don't know. I mean, mostly I think, the women are awful just because they're women, and once they go conformist, for all these reasons that other people have said. But it may prove that we're looking at it wrong. The old are lost, though. I mean, there's just no bringing, right? And women are kind of like old people that way, in that they get set in their ways, and there's just no bringing them around, man, once they get going in that direction. But But these old folks, like, you don't. I'm getting older myself, and I live in abject fear of, just all the things of getting old are bad. But then maybe the worst aspect of it is you see these old farts who lose their critical faculties, right? And there's no more changing. And really, it happens early. I know people will say, nah, Dennis, your political opinions are set in your 20s, and they never really change. I don't know about that, because mine seem to have changed. The fundament of it may not change, like the fundamental, elemental things that are making you think the way you do, perhaps don't change. But, there's so much more beyond that, right? And just see these old people, it's like trying to get their old joints to move like they used to. They just don't. They ain't gonna happen. And sadly, we don't have time for it. We have to wait for these boomers to die off, and we don't have time for it. The boomers aren't dying off fast enough, It should be like driving a car. I think, if your eyes get bad enough, right, and you get old enough that you can't safely drive a car, you take your license away. You need to take their voting rights away. I just want to say something quick about Israel, I guess. Bear, you're so right. Hard-hitting commentary from Bear. That's the best thing about Tim Pool. He was one of the few that told the truth about Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah, it's so funny to see the gang. I don't like to bring up Saylor's name because I like Steve Saylor. He's been good to me, and I don't think ill of him. I don't take the Nick Fuentes view of him, that he's that bad. But to see, Saylor and the gang around Saylor just still talking about this shit like this is new, right? They're probably talking about Ahmaud Arbery, right? And there's something wrong with this, even when they're right, So even the truth can be a means of destroying the larger truth, right? The best thing to kill the truth off is a sort of meaningless truth, a distracting truth, a truth that makes someone feel better, right? You give them, just the truth you want them to have. Because, we talk about people being stupid, but they're also smart too. I mean, smart enough to, want to know the truth, to want to be right at least from an egotistical standpoint. You want to be the guy who's right about things, right? There's at least that. I think that's something that guys have over women. Women don't see any status in simply being right on a subject, right? And guys are competing. Just like we might compete to see who can throw a ball farther, we'll also compete to see who has the more accurate take on things. So when they're feeding them these little fucking distracting morsels like Ahmaud Arbery and black stupidity and all of that, they're giving you the dose to satisfy your ego, to satisfy your vanity. Hey, man, yeah, I'm not like that idiot over there protesting against racism. I'm, not only am I right about the subject, I'm bold enough to speak the truth. I am and this is, I've been guilty of this for longer than I've known better, I have only known better some point, I think, in the Trump years, some point after 2016, did I become, anti-Semitic? Did I become sort of anti-democratic? Did I become something of a genuine reactionary? Before that, I was just like all these other phony conservatives, basically a shitlib, right? Who might as well have cited women's rights when he's talking about these subjects. That's sad. I can't, I'm the boomer. So when you guys want to hang somebody, you should just come get me. because I'm your boomer uncle who needs the pillow. Phil the Kill says, I vote to keep this time slot for whatever it's worth. Okay. 7 o'clock is probably too late. It should probably go 6. There's got to be some of you on the East Coast, right? 6 is 9 o'clock already on the East Coast, too. But we will. I mean, it's hard. The weather was beautiful today. And I've always got chores. All right. So it's just hard. It's hard to be inside on a nice day. And like I said, there's some things that I just always wait for the sun to come out to do that it didn't do today, that it just wanked off today. But anyway, yeah, okay. 6 o'clock, Sundays, Bubba's Bible Study. Be here. All right. Just briefly, I'll read from my notes on Israel. That was going to be the whole subject. Thus the title, Oblivion. First off, Israel's long-term project of destroying Iran has little to nothing to do with Iran developing a nuclear capability. People still talk about it like, yeah, that's really, I think Israel, they don't want Iran to have the capability. They don't want them to have the bomb because that evens things out and it changes the game. But kind of what the sweet spot for Israel is right where they have Iran, at least in the eyes of the vast, stupid American middle, that Iran can't have the bomb and they're on the verge of it, right? They've been doing this for 20 years. That's how fucking stupid we are. This is the sweet spot, to have Iran featured as the North Korea of the Middle East. And it's culminating now in this completely unprovoked attack, right? And it's so funny. I mean, you know, I won't bore you with what you already know and what you've already heard, no doubt. But Iran has been assassinating their scientists. They're not just the generals, even though Israel has been assassinating Iran's scientists and generals. Dude, if Iran assassinated Mark Milley, right, who was one of our generals, maybe chairman of the Joint Chiefs, even though he's a military man, he's a military target, just that one idiot who would, no loss, let's be honest, we would be, you know what I mean, we would be fucking going to war the next day. I mean, the cruise missiles would be going like the moment he flatlined, right? And Israel's been killing off their generals and non-military personnel. Like every scientist who is high up in the hierarchy of their nuclear program is at danger of assassination at any given time. And there are many, many who've been assassinated by Israel. And that idiot Donald Trump assassinated Soleimani, one of their very high-ranking guys, a guy who would have maybe become president of the country. He did it at Israel's behest during his time, right? And now Israel, you know, out of the blue, and contrary to what people think, Israel did not do it to stymie the negotiations that are coming up. But the negotiations that are coming up, supposedly, that were coming up between Trump and Iran, appear to be a distraction that got Iran maybe to lay down their guard long enough for Israel to do this. Again, remember Trump put the military bases in the Middle East on lockdown, on high alert, 2 weeks ago, was it? Because he saw this coming. There's just no denying it. And now he's trying to distance himself. And like I said, this paltry attempt to establish some distance from Israel's action, it'll be seized on by the people who don't want Trump to be Israel's bitch, pro-Trump people. You know, of the few of them, idiots, who still want you to think that Trump is playing 5D chess on your behalf. No. It's just humiliation, like I said. And Trump letting them do this, you know, letting them use him, right? So Trump is the patsy, and he's the patsy exposed for the world because he was going into this negotiation. So Israel's actions, unprovoked, just like they just did it. They just started a war. Fuck it, you know. They've been waging low-level warfare against these guys. Then they start a war days before Trump is supposed to go into talks with these people. Trump, the idiot who tore up the agreement we already had with Iran. Again, and I know you've heard it all before, but Iran has submitted to IAEA inspections. Iran is willing to bargain with their nuclear program, even though they don't have nuclear weapons. And Israel, who poor defenseless Israel, still this whole time has had maybe 400 weapons that they will not even acknowledge from technology they stole from us years ago. Yeah. The least ideal situation for Israel was Iran in compliance with the IAEA inspections. The worst situation for Israel, we can see that now, is Iran locked down in a non-proliferation agreement. The least ideal situation for Israel was Iran not developing a nuclear weapon. Not having a nuclear weapon. That's not the least ideal situation. The least ideal situation is the specter of Iran having one totally removed, right? Like America, the world, like there's just no plausibility to the idea that Iran is threatening to develop a nuclear weapon. That's the worst possible world for Israel, because this thing the whole time has been about Iran's support for Hezbollah. Really, they need to destroy Iran so that Hezbollah is starved of funds and weaponry, and then southern Lebanon becomes open to Israel. Southern Lebanon is part of the Greater Israel Project. They're going to swallow up the West Bank in all this. They are on the verge of swallowing up the West Bank, of annexing the West Bank. They've annexed the Golan Heights. They're occupying parts of Syria. They're just going for it, absolutely going for it, post October 7th, and we've handed it to them on a platter with Donald Trump because we've fallen for Donald Trump's bullshit. That I'm going to do something about. I'm going to fix this DIA nonsense. DIA. I always say DIA like it's the CIA. DEI nonsense, and you know what I mean? All of these other things that are real problems, but are at the same time distractions from the great problem. A destroyed Iranian regime will eventually solve the problem of Hezbollah, right? And it may be the key to unlock the Greater Israel Project finally. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Any of these idiots who want to milquetoast it, any of these idiots who want to talk about, oh, it's somebody else's war. Some idiot would say that on Twitter. Casey, remember this guy Casey, like a white advocate? I asked him, were you dropped on your head? He didn't respond. Trump's transparent attempt to distance the U.S. from Israel's war is a salvage operation that attempts humiliation to escape complicity, right? Trump was willing to look like he had no control over Israel to escape the obvious complicity, to wash his hands of this. And it achieved nothing. Like I said, he gets the humiliation and he's exposed as complicit. And that's been the fucking story of our relationship with this bastard country all this whole time. Trump's defeat at the hands of Israel not only means the victory of Zionists, it means the victory of the pro-immigration extremists hastening the demographic demise of America. That's why I'm blackpilled on this weekend. Trump had one job, and it wasn't to help Israel. It was to begin the process, maybe, of saving America from the migrant invasion. And America, as I see it, is lost on those two fronts in 1 week. We've lost in any attempt to distance ourselves from Israel, to finally break free of the control of that fucking country. And I think we've lost in our attempt to clamp down on immigration. And that's because Trump's presidency isn't going to survive the humiliation and obvious duplicity exposed with Israel's sudden war on Iran. So, anyway, cheerio, right? I don't know who Right F Bird is, but thank you for the comments. I know that's somebody who was under another moniker. When you guys change monikers, give me a hint at some point so I know if it's like, what, you know. Anyway. Thank you all. This has been a good one. I think this is not a bad show, actually. It's not quite 2 hours, maybe. How long have we done? How long have we done? Let's see if I got a timer somewhere. I got a timer somewhere. Not quite 2 hours. Oh well, anyway, I have to go. Thank you, Bear. Thank you, Right F Bird. I don't know what that is. I can't read that. Partly because I have bad eyes. Mogan David. Yes. MD 2020. Bear. Gotta do the more. Phil the Kill. God bless you, boys. Something wrong with them, but they're good boys. That's all. That in the background has been Austin Zone this whole time. And he was one of our go-to guys during the riots of 2020. It was just really good. We had some great times in 2020, I must admit, watching these endless riot streams, right? We would do like 4 or 5 hour streams. And it was, you know, the end of the world is amusing, at least. So anyway, here's Casino versus Japan to send us out. God bless you all.